There's no one else who loves me like you used to. Sometimes we're not ourselves. There's no one I can turn to.
Depending on where in the world you are coming and joining us from. A warm welcome to IAA Presents The Voice of Change, an initiative that is ready to bring to the forefront a conversation on gender representation. With our knowledge partners UNICEF and the internationally acclaimed Geena Institute on Gender in Media, a non-profit research organization that researches gender representation in media and advocates for equal representation of women. Our industry partner is Colors, and our associate partner is the Havas Group. We would also like to extend our gratitude to our web media partners as well, MXM, Campaign India, AdGully, Exchange for Media, Media Buzz, and Indian television. Thank you all so much for coming, supporting, and joining our initiative. I know it's the start of the week, but I hope that each and every one of you is already ready to take this topic of gender head on. Thank you all so much for marking your calendars and coming and joining us over here today. I wish I could be giving everyone over here a round of applause for coming and supporting everything that is taking place. But perils of a virtual setup, we live in this virtual world, but that does not mean that we can't be emotionally connected as well. My name is Tricia, and I will be your host for today. And I truly hope that you're settled, you're comfortable, and more importantly, you're safe. Because today we have something planned, something very powerful planned for the day. We'd also highly recommend that you do join us from your laptop as well as your desktops and not your mobile phones so that you can enjoy this experience completely. We also would like this to be a two-way conversation. So we would encourage you, ask your questions, put in your comments. We've got that Q&A box right over there, and let's keep that conversation going this afternoon. And of course, we'd love to hear your voice on social media. So don't forget to use that hashtag. It's hashtag Voice of Change. And do make sure that you tag us at IAA_India and Viacom18. So ladies and gentlemen, let's kickstart this afternoon's conversation. And here's something which I've been wondering about very recently. Though in the recent past, the country has seen a chairwoman who has been leading the country's largest bank. In regular walks of life, the way financial products are packaged and advertised, it is pretty evident that the TG is a male demographic. Now think of a personal care ad. We've seen a lot of women in those ads, right? While girls and women have a very strong presence in FMCG ads, their roles, they're very gender defined. So it won't be wrong to say that there has been a growth in the level of awareness, but we still have a long way to go. There's a lot that needs to be discussed openly and unabashedly. So to gather empirical evidence on this concept of gender stereotyping, the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, and IAA initiated a study which was anchored by UNICEF and researched by the Geena Institute on gender in media. And they conducted the first public study, a study that was done to systematically analyze gender representation in ads here in India. Now, over the course of 1 year, 3,416 of the most virtually prominent speaking and non-speaking characters in the top 1,000 most viewed in India across 19 market segments in films were analyzed. This evidence was gathered to substantiate this feeling that gender stereotyping, now consciously, unconsciously, or even subconsciously, exists in the advertising and media space in India today. In today's roundtable, we will see UNICEF come and unveil this report, which will be followed by a roundtable with all stakeholders of the ad and media industry delving into this subject and discussing the way forward from here. So before we do get straight into that conversation and we start breaking stereotypes and opening, of course, our panel, I would like to welcome Ms. Megha Tata. She is President, IAA India Chapter and Managing Director, South Asia, Discover Communication, as she comes onto the screens and officially welcomes each and every one of you today. Over to you, Megha.
Thank you, Frisha. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you who are joining us from all across the globe. Really appreciate your time investing in this such an important discussion. We know this is a year 2021. We know it's been an unprecedented year, but we also know that we've learned a lot to do in this year. We never thought we would be doing things like working from home or connecting virtually or finding the right balance of what is being called the new normal. But we did it, right? We learned fast and we did it in a few months. We managed to adjust to it. And that was wonderful because as human beings, we are very malleable and we are able to adjust to the environment as is deemed fit to us to survive. But the sad part is, even though we managed to adjust ourselves in this crazy times, when I look back in the years I've been in this industry, we've not been able to actually change one thing, and that is the way our genders are represented in media and advertising. At IA, we consider ourselves to be the global compass of marketing communication. And when we set ourselves to take this study with our knowledge partner, UNICEF, and the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media, we were confident that as industry, we would have taken great strides in the space of gender representation in Indian advertising. The study, of course, you'll hear the highlights shortly. The study, however, showed us that we have a long way to go and thus began the need to open this conversation and bring it to the forefront with advertisers, marketers, brand representatives, broadcasters, and social partners all coming together to build an ecosystem that talks the right language. So this event today is a short representation of this long-drawn effort that has gone behind this study, its findings, and the fact that we are just getting started. We need to put the wheels in motion to address this disparity of gender representation and stereotyping them. And I hope that today's event actually helps to accelerate those efforts. So as we gear up to hear from UNICEF on the findings and the views of our Power-Packed panel, I'm really excited to moderate a fabulous set of voices today and address some of those questions put forward by the audience. Let me take this opportunity also to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the team that has made this possible. First of all, our knowledge partners, UNICEF and Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media, for putting endless effort in viewing, reviewing, and summarizing gender representation in Indian ads. Our industry partners, Colors, for their support in putting this event together, and an extended gratitude to the team at Colors for helping with the logistics of this event. To our associate partner, the Havas Group, for leading it from the agency perspective and taking a strong stand in bringing about this change. To our web media partners and their teams, like all of them at MXM, AdGully, Campaign India, Exchange for Media, IndianTelevision.com, and Media Brief, for spreading the word and getting all of you connected with us. To the industry bodies, 3ASOFI, ASCII, and the Ad Club, for spreading the word on this event among their members and having strong representation on the panel today as well. And to the entire IAA Mancom team for their support to this show, a special mention to our Women Empowerment Co-Chair, Geena, and our guiding lights, Sir, always, Ramesh Sir, for his and their unstinting support. And most of all, to our panelists for taking the time to be with us today. I really look forward to an engaging discussion. And last but not the least, to our audience, that is actually going to be the actual voice of change. So as I hand the stage back to Frisha, I hope that this common conversation we start today doesn't just stay with us, and that we constantly reevaluate our representation of gender roles in every piece of work we put out there. Really hoping that this makes a genuine difference. Thank you so much once again, and over to you, Frisha.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Megha, and of course for welcoming everybody that has tuned in. It's absolutely wonderful to see that we have so many participants right here, people who are invested and engaged in opening up this conversation and being a part of our voice of change. And as you said, gender is now something that we have to start looking at as a broader spectrum, not just as two opposing ideals. Well, folks, with the kind of power our films and our ads have over our youth, and especially our society, I definitely think that it is time for an equitable gender representation. And some interventions are needed for our advertising as well as governing bodies. Maybe we need to establish gender guidelines for the advertising bodies with benchmarks for the quality as well as the quantity of representation of girls and women. Maybe we need to do so much more than what we are really doing right now. So to understand more, let's welcome onto our screens right now, Dr. Yasmin Ali Haq, Representative, UNICEF India, and Shreyasi Jha, Senior Advisor, Gender Equality, UNICEF New York, to shed more light and present the studio report by UNICEF and Geena Davis Institute on gender representation in media right here in India. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Frisha, and good to see you again, Megha. Really, in these times of remote working, we even meet and work remotely and hope to bring about change in a manner that will be more sustainable. So first of all, really a big thanks and gratitude to IAA for taking on this agenda, because it's not easy to take on as an issue. As Megha was saying, these are very deep-rooted issues we're dealing with. And gender inequalities start from even before a child is born, in a way. They affect children's lives and the lives of those who care for them in a way that at times hinders their growth, development, learning, and eventually in really reaching their full potential. So we know that the lack of parity impacts girls and women the most, but also disadvantages men and boys. And this is across the life cycle, whether it's during the early years, during adolescence, or in adulthood indeed. By increasing the value of girls and engaging men and communities to model this, what we would hope are positive gender norms, we can contribute to the achievement of gender equity and drive for a better outcome for all, whether it's girl or boy, in terms of access to education, jobs, reducing malnutrition, ending child marriage. And for this purpose, UNICEF works very closely with government and partners to address some of these gender deprivations in the programs that we support. We know that gender socialization is a learned behavior. Sorry, excuse me. It is a learned behavior from birth through childhood and adolescence. And as children, we observe and we learn social cues from our family, from our parents, from the schools, our teachers, and the societies in which we live, including the advertising and marketing. My apologies. And if we are to bring about a change in this, it's really important that the advertising and marketing industry recognizes the role they play, and takes that power and harnesses it in a very positive manner, so that they play a powerful role in the process of gender socialization, because it does have the potential to promote women and girls' empowerment and to shift the perception of men and boys on gender roles, which is very important. It's not just about women, it's about the societies we live in. So we need to identify and understand the advertising that is likely to be seen by children and young people if we are going to really effectively challenge the gender biases and to promote equality. We're very lucky that we have Shreyasi here with us today, and she's really the one who's going to take you through more of this. My role is really to once again express our gratitude to IAA for taking this subject on, for partnering with us on it, for the Geena Davis Institute to be a partner with it too, because there is such an important role that each and every one of you can play, and we really count on you. The children count on you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasmin, and a huge thanks to IAA and to all the partners who have joined us for this call today. So let's dive into the study that we've all been waiting for, and I'm going to start off by just giving a brief overview of the methodology and how we went about it, because this is such an important study that we did. So it's important for us to understand what were some of the metrics that we use. From UNICEF side, as well as from the Geena Davis Institute and with IAA and our partners in this research, the main objective was for us to look at how does advertising and media contribute towards gender stereotyping, as well as promoting some positive gender roles in India. So it's meant to serve as a baseline that I hope that we can continue to measure ourselves against and improve. We looked at the 1,000 most viewed ads in India, and we specifically looked at around 3,400 visually prominent speaking and non-speaking characters across 19 market segments. And these ads were then analyzed using Geena Davis's inclusion quotient. So the findings that I'm going to be sharing actually are based on this kind of very rigorous analysis that GDI conducted with us. The findings are classified into two components. We first look at quantitatively what we are finding, and then also the qualitative dimensions. So in terms of the quantitative representation, first the good news, we find that female and male characters are just as likely to appear in ads in India. So this is positive. So we have parity, which is actually an amazing thing. So female characters, in fact, dominate screen and speaking time. So almost 60% screen time and speaking time is dominated by female characters, and this is actually better than the global average. I'm going to be moving fast through the study, but there is a link that's available for everyone who's interested in more details, because I want to get into some of the juicier findings. So what we find is that actually in terms of the screen and speaking times, India, what we see in the advertising in India is actually doing better than the global averages. But when we start looking at the market sectors, we find that female characters are actually underrepresented in certain sectors like banking, infrastructure, media, travel, tourism, and sports, and overrepresented in personal care, fashion, and other kind of corporate products. While women and girls have a strong presence in advertising, they're mostly selling domestic or beauty products to female consumers. So this is where we start seeing the real stereotyping that begins. Female characters are more likely to be younger, whereas male characters are more likely to be older or children. So we find that boys are dominating when it comes to the younger age group or in the older age group, but women really dominate in that 20 to 29 age group. We also find that characters with darker skin tones are underrepresented. So again, Geena Davis has has an algorithm that allows them to use this representation, and we find an incredible dominance of lighter skin tone. We also find that the lighter skin tone, the colorism is highly evident in Indian ads, and the lighter skin tone is associated with upper class. So there is an income correlation with the skin tone. Female characters are more likely to have light or medium skin tone, while male characters are more likely to have dark skin tone. So this is where the colorism and the sexism is actually conflated. They are reinforcing each other. Female characters are also 4 times more likely to have smaller body types. And I do want to pause here and say that, the reason why, again, going to what Yasmin said, for UNICEF, we are an organization that works with children. And when we are looking at children watching this kind of, these kind of, advertising, these kind of images on screen, this concept of body image is really important. Skin tone is really important. It directly contributes to their confidence, their self-esteem, and so many other child-related outcomes that we all care about. When we look at the quality of representations, the qualitative findings, we find that female characters are more likely to be shown as stunning or attractive. Now, I do also want to say that from UNICEF's side, as well as from Geena Davis' side, we don't endorse any classification of traditional beauty standards, which are classified as stunning or attractive. However, what we did do was that the metrics that we use was really to measure whether advertisements advertisers are thinking outside the box when they are looking at beauty standards, or are they just adhering to the traditional beauty standards that classifies certain kind of beauty as being beautiful or stunning or average looking. However, when you look at the classification of what is being shown right now, female characters are shown to have those traditional standards of beauty. We also find that there is a correlation between upper class female characters are more likely to be shown as adhering to these traditional beauty standards. So again, a link between economic class and beauty standards. We also find that female characters with light skin tones are shown to be adhering to the more traditional beauty standards. So we find that a lot of advertising that is being shown is really falling into a certain kind of standard, which is linked with both gender stereotypes as well as with colorism and with economic class and status. Female characters are 6 times more likely to be in revealing clothing. They are 5 times more likely to be sexually objectified and 4 times more likely to be partially nude. So the sexualization of female characters is extremely common in the advertising that we analyzed. We also find that male and female characters are equally likely to be a gender trope. So when we're talking about gender stereotypes, while with female gender stereotypes, there's a lot that's happening around the body type, the sexual imagery. There are also gender tropes that applies to men. The most kind of common gender tropes that we see for women were either the subservient wife or the pushy aunt, whereas the kind of gender tropes that applies to men was mostly about them being more domineering or controlling or aggressive, and a man who does not help with domestic activities. So that's also a kind of a stereotype that we see as it affects men. Male characters are more likely than female to be shown in paid occupation and actually working, whereas female characters are, as I've mentioned, shown to be more in domestic work. Male characters are also significantly more likely to be shown as leaders. So, and female characters are 3 times more likely to be shown as a caretaker or as a parent. And mothers are 3 times more likely to be shown as an excellent parent compared to fathers. So on one hand, when we're thinking of stereotype, we always think that, there are 2 sides to it. On one hand, we are glorifying women in certain kinds of roles. On the other hand, we are actually undermining men in those same roles. And the reverse of it is that we are actually glorifying men in these leadership paid roles and undermining women in those roles. Female characters are more likely to be seen as shopping, cleaning, or preparing meals, or in a living room or a bedroom, whereas men are more likely to be seen in an office, outdoors, or in a sporting event. So what do we do about it? From an advertising community, I think there are a few clear asks, and UNICEF is very proud to partner with the Unstereotype Alliance, which is an alliance of like-minded companies as well as advertising agencies that are working to set these industry standards. And we're very happy to partner with other UN agencies like UN Women on the Unstereotype Alliance. And what we are advocating for is to establish gender guidelines for advertising and setting benchmarks for both the quantity as well as the quality of representation of women and girls. We would also like to advocate for establishing guidelines around skin color, around the depiction of caste and class guidelines for advertising, both quality as well as quantitatively, and providing financial incentives so that advertisers are able to meet and achieve gender, skin tone, caste, and class benchmarks. For content creators, what we would like to request is write and cast women and girls at equitable rates to men and boys in advertising. Show more girls in ads, especially in that age group of 1 to 12, the core age where UNICEF is working, and the age where children get socialized into these kind of stereotypes. Really depicting women of all ages, more female characters over the age of 50, characters across different skin tone spectrum, and characters with different body size, especially female characters with diverse appearances, and more female characters in occupations, and showing them as working, more female characters in formal and informal positions of leadership, and female characters who are funny and intelligent, and more female characters in public roles, and more male characters in caregiving roles. And finally, we would really like to see more women, more female characters in public spaces, in the workplace or in sporting events, and male in more private spaces like the bedroom, and the living room, and the kitchen. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share these findings.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shreyasi, as well as Yasmin, for coming, joining, and of course, sharing these findings with us. I'm sure a lot of people in our audience have found them very, very insightful. A big thank you to both of you. Well, folks, before I do introduce our panel for today, do not forget, we would love to hear from each and every one of you. So do make sure that you send in those questions in our Q&A box. And of course, we'd love to hear from you on social media as well. If you are talking about the voice of change, then that is the hashtag. And of course, do tag us at IAA_India and at Viacom18. So ladies and gentlemen, let's go straight into that panel discussion. And let me introduce to you our esteemed panelists. We have a wonderful collection and selection of individuals coming and joining us from across advertising, media, marketing, as they come in and they discuss the representation of women in ads, films, TV shows, and other forms of fiction content. So before I do introduce our panel, let me once again introduce to you our moderator, Ms. Megha Tata. She is our President, IAA India Chapter, and Managing Director, South Asia for Discovery Communications India. Let's now meet our panelists for today. Mr. Subhash Kamath is the Chairman, ASCI, and CEO at BBH and Publicis Worldwide India. Mr. Atit Mehta is the Head of Marketing at Byju's. Ms. Kainas Karmakar is the Chief Creative Officer at Ogilvy, India. Ms. Neena Ilavia Jaipuria is the Head Hindi Mass Entertainment and Kids TV Network at Viacom18 Media Private Limited and Co-Chair Empowerment Committee at IAA. Rana Barura is our Honorary Treasurer, AAAI, and Group CEO, Havas Group India. Ashwini Iyer Tiwari, she is an artist, filmmaker, and writer. And Dr. A.L. Sharda, she is the director at Population First. Well, folks, over to you, and I'm sure everyone is really looking forward to this session. And of course, do make sure that you keep those questions coming in, as we will address them at the end of this panel.
Thank you so much, Frisha, yes, once again, for introducing all of us and the wonderful panelists. Welcome all of you to the Voice of Change. You are very strong voices in your own fields and the industry. It is my privilege and an honor to actually be moderating this conversation and discussion with each one of you. Thank you to Yasmin and Shreyasi for yet again highlighting the need of this discussion and those findings. While started on a good note, clearly there is a whole lot of room for improvement as an industry, because we are not just saying, but the results spoke, and there is enough and more data now to reiterate the point that there is a need for a voice to change. So without much ado, we'd like to get into this discussion. And when I saw those findings and I saw the recommendations which UNICEF made, and it to me seemed like they're so easy to do. I mean, why would it be so difficult to not to do this? I mean, they are not exactly going to change the business in many ways. They seem to be easy to do, but clearly there are challenges as an industry we are facing, because if it was easy, we would have done it. But I do want to start this discussion with you, Subhash, because you're leading an association which has actually done a whole lot of good work in putting a certain framework for our industry and creating the guidelines of advertising which we are seeing today. And I know that for sure, being part of this industry for 30 odd years now, that I've seen a shift in the way the thinking of some of our creative has happened, and a lot has to go with what ASCII has done. However, when it comes to the gender representation and the stereotyping of women, I'm not sure the needle has really moved enough. And so I wanted to understand from you that, from your point of view, and maybe from ASCII's point of view, what is it that's gone right, and what is it that we could do better? Subhash, you're on mute.
Looking at it from an industry perspective, I think the first thing is to raise the consciousness amongst ourselves, right? Is the role of advertising only to mirror society, or does it have the power to even shape society? If you believe that our role is only to mirror society, then we will look for the stereotypes constantly and try and play them, right? But if you believe that you have the power to shape opinion and shape society and influence society, then you will start looking for what are the more future-facing and more responsible things to do, right? So I believe that in the last 10 years, I have seen a rise in that consciousness, all right? Both from our own industry with more women at the top, more women on the marketing side at the top. Kainaz is here, people like Kainaz and Tista and Swati, etc., as the top of their creative fields. That is the way to do it. Firstly, raise our own consciousness. So from an industry body perspective, we have in the past focused a lot on policing the narrative, if I may use the term, focusing on the complaints management system. I think in the recent times, what we've done is to, apart from continuing to manage complaints, we have focused a lot on how does one guide the industry? How does one guide or help the industry navigate towards more responsible advertising? And gender depiction and representation is very much a key part of our plans. Just like this report, we have also embarked on a fairly ambitious project called Gender Next, which will be launched and open to everybody in September. That work is already underway. It's a very multi-tiered interrogation and discovery process, not just speaking to consumers at different strata of society, but also with people who are in the seat of command, creative directors, filmmakers, marketing heads, and all of that is being done. And the initial findings have been very, very startling. I think the advertising industry is going to get mightily surprised when they hear what consumers themselves are saying today. Having said that, I think, look, the needle never shifts in a society immediately. It takes time to evolve, right? And I think today it's a far more woke world, isn't it? And these conversations are coming up a lot more in this last 10 years. A lot more people are being heard, a lot more voices are being heard, opinions are being shared. And I think that will start to catalyze and and the change a little faster than it has perhaps 25 years before.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's great that you're saying that there is going to be, further more change taking place in the way that the industry should be thinking, and ASCII will play a key role. And that's wonderful, because I think, for example, like one of the recommendations UNICEF has is that, there has to be a certain, you quantify what is the kind of quality of content which should come in. So, and if that can be created as a guideline from an industry body like yours, I think there will be, sometimes you have to force things to happen to become a natural way of existence, right? So I think that would be wonderful if that could actually come into reality. Thanks, Subhash. I want to go straight into to Kainaz now, actually, because Kainaz, you great work you do. You're fabulous in the work you've done. You represent an organization which comes with such fabulous creative content. And you being a woman, you understand that probably on how those are the set of challenges which probably you face when it comes to getting some of a creative idea executed. So maybe it's very easy for us sitting in a panel to say, listen, this is how you should be doing it, and this is how it works. But tell us, with hands-on experience, sometimes how does it work for you at a creative level when you want to put a content together with a certain way to represent a woman, but may not necessarily be accepted by the client you're making it for? And do you see some kind of pushbacks you get from clients, or do you see them more forthcoming? And how do you navigate this challenge to make this come alive?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me here. It's a wonderful study, and there should definitely be more of this happening. And I'm glad you asked me this question, because I think as an industry, the only thing that's standing in the way of where we should be is us, and I think that we need to put our foot down more than ever when it comes to these things. I'm blessed with a really, really good set of clients. They're very forward thinking. In fact, there are times when certain clients have pointed it out to us as an agency. Maybe if we change this, it will be less of a stereotype. I work a lot on Unilever, which actually has unstereotype as a category, and I have won awards in unstereotype work, which makes me extremely, extremely proud. But I'll tell you one instance, about the question that you asked, because the mindset does exist. Like you said, it's not, the needle has not shifted as much as. So we were doing an ad for a certain brand, and we were casting, and we chose, according to the client, a less good looking face. Okay. And we produced the ad, and the results of the sales were not as good as some of the previous work we had done. And when we met at the client's office, he said, maybe it's because the girl was not as good looking as she should have been. And we were like, excuse me? I mean, there are 100 factors between why an ad will work or not work. It's certainly not because we chose a girl who, according to you, was not as good looking. And in fact, as an agency, we said that if we had to cast all over again, we would cast the same girl. Because there were other issues why the product didn't do as well as it did in the previous years. But the first thought that came into the person's head was that, oh, maybe because, the agency told me to cast somebody whose face is not considered by us as conventionally a good looking face. And that was a shocker. But having said that, I think the way forward is to not get deterred by comments like this, but to go back and again do what you believe is the right thing to do. I'm not saying that we deliberately seek out a certain kind of person, but whoever is right for the role should be cast. Not based on skin color or the size of the person, but who's right, the best actor should be cast. And I think that not only as an agency, but a lot of my clients are doing a lot of work in unstereotyping and pushing the agenda. Like Dove does a lot of work in across the world and pushing the fact that women are beautiful just as they are and must be represented as such. So this was one example that I clearly remember because it's just stayed with me.
And I'm surprised I mean, if I were you, I would have probably had a very nasty reaction to that. But I can imagine that you're right. These are the subconscious biases which exist in our minds and a lot of people's minds. And I think if you can stand true to that, frankly, Kainas, and you have the power to do so, I think that's hats off to you. And I really respect that aspect and your clients who support that as well. So hope that most of the clients start thinking on those lines. Of course, like we said, needle is yet to move in that direction. Let me move now to Nina, to you. Again, we know television has such a huge reach, right, across the country. And we know there are so many Indias within India which exist. And I always say that, India is one country where we are living in multiple centuries at the same time. You're talking from child marriage to gay marriages in the same breath, right? And that's what you got to cater to, that kind of audience. But because television does have such an integral role to play in reaching to the masses, and Colors has done some great work on making some social content as well. How do you navigate through when you have to manage these commercial considerations versus social messaging? Because at the end of the day, we all have to run a business as well, right? And so how does one balance this act? Nina, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thanks, Megha. Very pertinent question, I must say. But having said that, let me start from the top, which is to say that we at Viacom 18 believe that doing good is good for business. And, Colors being the mass entertainment channel that it is, caters to, millions of Indians and caters to their entertainment need of the entire family. And so over the years, I think, Colors has responsibly, because with great reach comes great responsibility, I would imagine, and therefore we have very responsibly curated and created a lot of our content that highlights and addresses social causes and social evils that unfortunately continue to prevail in our country. So over the years, we've tried to build into our entertainment offering, which is that of wholesome variety entertainment. But within that variety, what we've tried to do is build the narrative of the social messaging. And you will see a lot of our content has been curated and created in a way where we tell really heartwarming stories and have really created leading female protagonists to be really very strong and powerful in character. So even today, when you look at it, a lot of the entertainment that we offer to our viewers is that of which addresses social issues. So, one show that really comes to my mind, and there are two I'll talk about, which is Barrister Babu, for example. A show that talks about a young girl and really deals with sensitive subjects like, girl-child education, to puberty, to menstruation, and child marriage. At the other hand, we of course have a show called Molki, which deals with bride buying in Haryana, an issue that still prevails thanks to the skewed gender ratio in that particular region. Or, for example, even Shakti, that deals with the story of a transgender. And of course, the most iconic show that we all know about is Balika Vadhu, which highlights the trials and tribulations of an innocent child bride, Anandi. But the thing is, Megha, that over the years, it's a narrative that we continue to offer and have not given up. So we consistently believe that it is our job as a responsible broadcaster that has the kind of reach and influence that we do to weave into our entertainment these social narratives. And because at the end of the day, we bring wholesome entertainment, which is not depriving them of entertainment that is not necessarily social as well. And therefore, while we have a variety of fiction stories, which are heartwarming, we also have the non-scripted reality shows like Dance Diwani and Khatro Ke Khiladi. And it is this wonderful mix that actually gets the support of all our advertisers and stakeholders, brands who continue to support us and continue to partner with us. And of course, we continue to get the love of the viewers because it is this wholesome mix which is giving them wholesome entertainment, but at the same time, driving a social narrative which is so undermining of each and every character and story that we have created. And therefore, it's a fine combination of business doing good for business, and of course, we trying to make a difference at society at large, I would imagine.
That's wonderful, Geena. I mean, you're absolutely right. It doesn't have to be either or. It
Yeah.
has, it is definitely an and all, wherein you have to be able to provide something which is entertaining, but at the same time, it gets the right message across.
In fact, we are bringing Balika Vadhu back. So a new Anandhi is coming back with her new trials and tribulations. So
good.
It's really
I'm
wonderful.
sure the audience is excited about that. So thanks, Geena. I want to now sort of change this conversation a bit. So we've been talking about what is not going right, and maybe what they could do better. So Rana, coming to you, you've been a great propagator of representation of women, whether at workplace or generally from an advertising point of view as well. Would be nice to get some examples from you as to what, according to you, where things have been done correctly. Like, what are the examples where some brands have really made that difference and not only did the right thing from a creative communication point of view, but it benefited them at a business level as well? Is there any example you may have either from your own group or any as a general from the industry?
Thanks, Megha. I think, so I've been hearing all the others, and, I think we do understand that this is a very important point that we are all discussing and all. And you're right that at the group that I represent, this is something we've taken it absolutely head on. We've decided whether it's about the people, whether it's the senior management, whether it's hiring, whether it's the gender equal ratio, we must address it. Better late than never. But, the needle has moved, at least in some parts of our world of conversations. I think what we are also seeing as a representation are naturally the kind of brands and conversation that's happening. And yes, there are many brands, but I'll give you a interesting example, which many of you would be familiar with. Very, very stereotypical, very, if I give you the category, it will immediately give you images. So the category is condoms. Immediately it gives you images of, oh, I know what it should be and how it should be. And I'm not going to mention any other competitive brands and all, but how that world operates and what it does and what we do. So one of our clients, which is a very strong client on the creative agency side, is Reckitt. And one of their very, very popular brands and a very strong brand is a brand called Durex. And how do you position Durex and how do you make a brand stand out in this category, which is brand of condoms, where that it has to be done in a certain way. And it kind of follows all the codes that we just saw in terms of the categories. And I was smiling that, all the don'ts I could see there. Things that should not come out there were like standing straight out, that this. Now, when you come out with a brand Durex and you feel that, it is aiming for a certain kind of a world and a certain kind of a conversation that is being spoken, it is naturally what one can understand. There's a new world that's coming up. There's youth, there is a very metro bunch of people, there is a different kind of conversation that's happening, there is a very different kind of dialogues. And like Geena was saying, the conversations have changed around. You cannot stick to certain formats and all. The brand then takes on a certain stance that, I do not want to belong to the genre of condoms. I'm not going to sell sex. I'm not going to get into on those conversations. And you break the myth that it is not about that. It is about social lubricants. It is about getting people together. It's about young. It's about, you change the entire dialogue. You change the entire conversation. It is one of the most talked about brands in the country. I don't know if you all follow the social language or the social world of media. The kind of conversations that we move on that brand, it's actually one of the most humorous, funny, topical, fun brand to hang on with. And then when you have products that you launch in terms of, if I mention the products, when I walked in and I said, so what are you going to launch next? They said, we are going to launch flavors. We are going to launch jelly. We are going to, now these are like stuff which you feel, wow. But, when you're sitting in a bunch of people with the client from Reckitt, from Havas, and you're working with all bunch of men and women, every single shackle is down, everything goes, and you come out with a brand, with a new product, which was the most revolutionary product. It won practically most of the FEs. It won everything. It was called a brand which was called Mutual Orgasm. And can you imagine the kind of conversation that's happening in the conference room? Can you imagine what kind of stuff that's being discussed? Which is, you have to throw everything out of the window. You're not talking, you're basically saying that I'm going to launch a brand which is going to, you know what was the challenge? I know the challenge was basically saying that in India, and now the condom penetration is less than 5% in this country. That's abysmal. So I'm not here to sell
That
that.
explains the population in the country.
So, but it's abysmal, right? So now what do you do? So now if you're going to say, and what is one of the big challenges that this brand was facing last year? You were seeing that it's, again, a very stereotypical habit. A man, he orgasm happens and he's out, it's over, right? So we said, okay, what do? They launched something called mutual orgasm. Now, the entire commercial was based looking at the woman, the kind of conversation that you're going to do. So there is a needle which is changing and the kind of conversation that is happening. And if I look at other brands, and we know that are enough and more, like Geena said, excellent brands like Unilever, which is like really promoting it, Procter & Gamble, many brands. And now actually it's, I think I'm seeing it cut across every single client and category. I'm not going to mention it like a full sweeping statement, but I think people are very conscious of the fact that, you need to be clear about what kind of stuff you are depicting, what kind of conversations are you doing. We are extremely clear that if you're going to send a message, is this message getting too aggressively on the negative side, or is it trying to be too sexist? And one of the big learnings when you have clients or brands like this and really supportive clients in, like I said, a stereotypical kind of category, and you're breaking all the taboos, changing the formats, we definitely see that, things are changing. And I'm glad that we are addressing these issues up front, because like I said, in our group, these are conversations which happen seriously at the Mancom level, at the grassroots level, because it's a conversation we are very clear about, that you cannot encourage, conversations. Because I think, what Subhash was also saying, some of these conversations have to change internally, because when it changes internally, you go out into your client meetings, or you start discussing production, film shoots and all, you just kill them in the bud, because you hear something and you say that, hey, this is not the conversation we are doing.
Wonderful. I mean, it's good to know, Rana, that you and the team are making a difference internally in your organization. And you're right, it has to begin from you. I mean, it has to begin from the top. And if if you say yes is yes and no and no, and if you can take that into actual fruition into a brand and a conversation, which not only does the right thing, but is good for the business, I think you've got it right then. That's wonderful. I'll come back to another question I have for you a little later, but let me move on to you, Ashwini. I love your work, whether it's Neel Vatte Sannata, whether it's Panga or Bareli Ki Barfi, you've created some amazing content and with very strong women characters. And, clearly you do believe in that space very strongly yourself. But you yourself have come from the advertising world, and now you're making some amazing films as well. What's, in your opinion, is the real issue we're facing here? Where do you think is the challenge in changing that narrative in a manner where the research findings today, even 20 years later, ever since the advent of this industry, or 30 years later, not much has changed when it comes to the representation of women? So where do you think we're going wrong, and what do you think we should be doing hence to address this? Ashni, you're on mute.
Thank you for calling me here. I'm happy to be a part of this wider group. And also Kena's and me have been a copy and art team for really, really long in Leo Burnett. So this put me back to the days when we used to work on P&G. And it started off from there, and we started off on a detergent brand. So that's how it takes me back to the memories of how women have been evolving in terms of, I would say, behind the scenes and in front of the camera. Behind the camera, reason being is because once I was told by KV Sridhar in Leo Burnett that you need to hire more women in your team. And it was like a real, it was like an eye opener, is because me always being an encourager of a lot of women in my team, was told that I see a lot of boys in your group. I think you need to hire more women. And it was
Cheers to Pops
almost,
for that.
yeah, cheers to Pops for that, who's always encouraged and made sure that, women are always in the forefront. He always feels that. So I started from there. So that was my first eye opener, that I needed more women in my team to be fronting clients, is because I wanted my clients to look into our eyes and talk to us, and not look into, not look onto the left or right of camera, or when you're sitting in front and talking here, and not looking at you and talking. So I didn't understand that. From being called sir far too many times, even now, behind the camera, to be taken seriously by clients, and even when you are representing. When I say representation for me is a very, very important aspect, is because you have an idea on paper, and then what do you do when you show that idea? For me, that is very important. From a woman wearing a sari and always in the kitchen, to making her wear the classic West Side clothes in advertising, is because every time we used to go for a PPM, we would say that, okay, the furniture should, if it's a middle class house, the furniture would be something like Fab India, and if the clothes are there, then it would be something like West Side. So it was like a norm that these are the only two things. From there, you start moving a little more ahead and say, okay, I think now we're a little bored of making women wear salwar kameezes. So let's now move on to kurtas and pants. So that was the next step. For me, representation of women, especially, is what the middle town India looks like. And when middle town India changes, I think advertising changes across boundaries, is because what we do and how we stay in the cities versus how we would stay in a midtown, which is no more a midtown, is because you go to a Lucknow, Bhopal, any of those midtown places, they have changed considerably. So what we thought that, okay, she would be wearing a sari at home, is no, it's not that. She has evolved. It's that we have lacked seeing this woman evolving. If we had not seen that, if we don't see that, I don't think so we're going to represent that. So for me, that is very, very important. Somewhere we got stuck in time, and we said that representation only belongs to a certain kind of status quo. Also, the moment you show a woman taking a decision or moving outside the comfort zone of a set norm. So I'll take the example of Panga, where if the woman is leaving a house and her child and going and working outside and leaving her children, it's like, what the hell? I mean, why is she even doing this thing? I've got messages of people saying that I'm definitely not going to show this to my wife.
Wow.
This film to my wife. Is because if I show this to her, meko a billion karna padega, something like that, So that's how it is. And this is not divided by class. This is not about skin color. This is not about any of those outer appearances. This is what is here. And this doesn't have any class, age, or how much money do you have in your bank, or what car do you drive, or what house you stay in. It is all, for me, thought process of any individual of a changing society belongs to the mindset. So the same mindset could be in a SSC A plus, and the same mindset could go to a CC plus D also. That is very, very important for me. The other thing which I feel is that if you keep harping something all the time, it ultimately gets into the consumer's mind. And you have to keep harping that, shamelessly harping it. It's because you do not do that, then they assume that this is how it is and this is how it's going to be. The Ariel Share the Load campaign was a great example to show that how co-parenting exists. You need to have co-parenting. The rearing a child or the housework is just not one person's job. It is about both the parents, or giving a child, bearing a child is just not the mother's job. It's also the father's equally involved. From I am having a child, when recently I heard some of my associates saying they were expecting a child, and the guy calls me up and says that, hey, I'm expecting a child,
Nice.
and I just delivered.
Mm.
From saying my wife delivered to I just delivered, there's a lot of difference there. And I do feel, as creators, as writers, as people who are having a say on how certain things look and feel in the media space, we have the opportunity to at least change the tone and the way things look. And we will be said, maybe it is not like this, but sometimes when you keep telling the same thing again and again, it just starts harping. What I also see is that you need to make subtle changes, and that is something which I have learned through all the work which I have done. Whether it was this little short film called Ghar Ki Murgi, which I made, and it was Sakshi Tanwar was there in it, and she just said that she wants to take a break and she's going to go up. And the whole house like just collapsed, saying that how can she go and take a break? And the husband is asking, oh, you just do this work. I never showed her not working. She had a beauty parlor where she used to do a little work there. But for her husband, even that doesn't seem to be work. It's just like some time pass. But the moment you show that she has some work, without over explaining it too much, and without I feel that no one likes to be told and said that this is how you need to change. Change doesn't happen overnight. Change happens through slowly nudging and saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to show. And the moment you start doing that, it just becomes a part of your system. So the consumer is used to now seeing a certain kind of play role of what role play of what they are represented as.
Wonderful.
I
Yeah.
also feel we go and we do a lot of research before we launch a brand or before we come out with certain aspects. But going and doing a psychological research is more important than going and doing an outward research of how a person stays, eats, and takes care of a family. The moment you go
wonderful.
inside is what the thought happens. And the greatest example of that would be the KBC Girl Child film, which was made. So I was there at the shoot. It was in a place close to Delhi, but in the border, Haryana-Delhi border. And I was, we were there, and it's a very small village. And there were a bunch of women whose house we were shooting in. They were all like looking from the corner of the room. What is happening here? This seems to be like very bizarre. Suddenly, one of the women just drags me inside her room, inside. And then when I go inside, I see like this bunch of 5 women there. And he said, "आप किसके लिए आए हो वहाँ पर? जो शूट कर रहा है आपका पति है?" I said, "नहीं." अच्छा, तो आपके घर पे अलाउ करते हैं आपको ऐसे ही आने के लिए, ऐसे ही आप जा रहे हो? So, and she didn't want to say गैर मर्द के साथ आप ऐसे ही बाहर जाके शूट कर रहे हो, whatever, she was just being very mindful of that. And I said, नहीं, तो मैं काम करती हूँ. बच्चे हैं आपके? बोला, yes, I have kids. So कितने हैं? मैंने बोला 2 बच्चे हैं. अच्छा, तो बच्चे को छोड़ के आप आ गए यहाँ पर? So I said, हाँ, थोड़े दिनों के लिए है, संभाल लेंगे. अच्छा, अच्छी बात है, ऐसे ही होना चाहिए. Then one woman comes closer to me and says, do you know what, my daughter, she's doing a B.Ed, and now she's going to Delhi, Gurgaon. She's going to Gurgaon, and she'll be coming back in the night train. And I've not told my husband, but I want her to do something well. I don't want her to be like me. I think that's what has changed. It's not about the clothes you wear. It's not about anything else. It's just about what you think in the mind.
Wonderful. That's such a wonderful insight by you, Ashwini. And this, well, there is obviously hope, and there are some lovely examples you shared, and hopefully that this narrative becomes stronger, and of all people like yourself and Kainaz and Nina, all of you can play such an integral role in getting that narrative change. So more power to you, all of you. Let me now quickly move to Atit. And, having Atit as part of this panel is so important because, we spoke about when UNICEF, shared that how children are at such an impressionable age to be able to absorb and take away what they see, and they are what you make them to be, and they are the future of our future generation of our country and world at large. So what we imbibe in them is such an important aspect, something we cannot ignore. So Atit, to you really, Byju's has taken the world by storm, and it comes to brand and the expansion and the technology and the innovation you have brought into the edtech space. And clearly you do have a huge impact on the kids in that age group. What do you think either Byju's per se or at an industry level, marketers who are targeting kids can do to address this gender stereotyping issue at that impressionable age?
Thanks, Megha. So see, all of us spoke about that we have tried and we are still trying and we will continue trying to move the needle, but somewhere we all feel that the needle has not moved. So we are there for the next 15, 20, 30 years. So this is the generation where the change has happened, but it's very important that the next generation learns it at the early stage, because what you learn at the early stage is going to always stay with you. Yeah, as Ashwini mentioned, it is not the money, it's not the SEC you belong to, it's all in your mind, how you look at things. Yeah, so it's very, very important, not only from a business which we are operating in talking to the kids, but overall that we need to inculcate, we need to teach our kids that some things which are non-negotiables. Yeah, we speak about honesty, we speak about integrity, we speak about working hard, we speak about that if you study well, you will do well in life. But we have never spoken, at least when we were growing up, I think our parents would have never spoken to us that respect, gender equality was never part of a day-to-day conversation. Everything else was. Yeah, so it's very critical as an industry, as an advertiser, as a media organization, as content creators, we start talking about it, that we need to tell our kids that you need to respect women, there is equality, there shouldn't be any body shame and all those things which we have been speaking about. So teaching them not only education, but if one is able to do that across the levels, it's very important. At least this type of conversations will not happen 20, 25 years down the line, and we are staying in an idealistic world, and our kids are treating each other as equals, and there is no discrimination which is happening.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm wondering if Byju's, have you got, you think, for example, can there be like a moral science class or something to do with the gender stereotyping taught through your app?
Yeah, so we are in the process of putting this entire piece together, which will run in parallel with the academics, because see, also what happens is, Megha, that education is a very, very serious category. Good quality education is expensive. There is a lot of, for an average Indian. So it's important that the pressure which is getting created in the education segment, whether it is offline, online, last 1.5 years, we have seen online, but earlier it was schools. Someday schools will open up, we are back to the grind. But it's very important that the softer aspect of education in terms of mental conditioning, how to take pressure, how to handle things is going to play a very, very critical role. And we are cognizant of that particular fact. And that's what we would be intending doing as we go forward.
Wonderful. Yes, Atit, more power to you, because you can actually make a difference right at the grassroots level where the child is at that impressionable age. Talking about grassroots, I have to now bring in Dr. Sharda, who I respect a lot for the work she does through Population First and Ladli. I've worked with Dr. in multiple interventions through, addressing some of these gender issues at industry levels. So Dr. Sharda, I mean, you've heard all of us speak, and I wanted to keep you the last because there's one to say and there's one what is happening on the ground, So your experience of what's actually happening on the ground, and do you think the research findings and this whole work we are doing, trying to make this a conversation a bit more constructive and where the needle moves, what do you think can and should be done to make that positive impact?
Thank you, Megha. I've been reviewing ads for Campaign India since 2013, and I certainly see a positive shift in the communication. I usually categorize ads into gender offensive, stereotypical, gender neutral, and gender sensitive and gender transformative. Over the years, I see that there are less and less number of acts which fall under the category of gender offensive. Like, we are not having such, kind of ads anymore. I won't say we are not having, but we have very few ads which fall in the category. And generally, most of the ads fall in the category of gender neutral or gender stereotypical. But I still see a steady increase in the gender sensitive and also gender transformative ads, which are challenging the gender stereotypes in a very in a very aggressive or in a very positive fashion. So I do see a lot of change in advertising over the years. For instance, projection of girls and children. We see more girls being projected in the advertisements and in a more positive way. They are no longer just the props in an ad, but they are the ones who are taking decisions. They are the ones who are winning games, succeeding. Their aspirations and their ambitions are being reflected in the advertisements, which is really very, very good. But I would like to say that girls and women are still very typical advertising models, fair, slim, attractive. And I also feel that there is a expectation from the consumers for the women portrayed in the advertisements to be like that. I remember an incident. There was an ad where featuring girls and boys, and the main protagonist of the ad was a very non-stereotypical kind of a girl, not very attractive, not very beautiful in the typical sense. And when that ad was playing, suddenly somebody said, why they couldn't get anybody better? So, it was quite a shocking thing for me, because she was saying something nice. She was she was fitting into the role of a little bossy kind of a girl. And then it was a nice ad. And I was surprised when somebody said, oh, didn't they get anybody better for this ad? So there is also some expectation, that typical stereotyping which happens on the part of the consumers also. But what I feel is that we need to bring in more and more diversity into the advertisements, and then normalize diversity of women in our visual presentation, be it at home or in public or workplaces, as Ashwini has said. So the study looked at, I feel, at the most frequently viewed ads, which are likely to be the domestic and beauty products category. But some of the gender sensitive ads may not have found place in the research, but it doesn't really matter, as there are ads as these are the ads which the audiences are bombarded with, and they reinforce the gender stereotypes. It doesn't matter that we have a lot of ads, for other products which are very gender sensitive. For instance, many of the corporate films are now promoting gender sensitivity as a corporate value. And we have some amazing films, like we have Urban Clap, we have Siat, and we have many, Nanhi Kali, for instance, is a good ad, which is actually promoting the CSR initiative of Mahindra's, and at the same time touching upon something which is very, very important, that is girl-child education. But those, I'm sure, have not come into this 1,000 ads, because they are not the ones which are frequently played on TV. But they are also very important because they have a lot of viewership on the social media and other social media platforms. So what I feel is that even the long format films are having very good scripts, and they're good narratives, and they are touching on some very important gender issues, but they are only seen on the social media platforms. So there is a lot of change happening, which may not have been, which the research has not been able to catch, but doesn't matter, because the purpose is to see what is it that the audiences are being bombarded with. And it is very important to normalize the roles of men and women, the non-stereotypical roles of men and women. It's not that, all of us who are there on this panel, we are being very stereotypical in our lives. We are very, very non-stereotypical. Like, I mean, we really don't fall into that stereotypical category, whether it is men or women, but that is not being captured in the advertisements. So the more casually you show men being engaged or women being engaged in non-stereotypical activities, because advertising is a visual medium, so the image remains in our mind longer than the message that is conveyed in words. So for instance, like I always give this example of, Akshay Kumar in one of the films, where throughout the film he is shown carrying the baby, making the rotis, serving the child, serving the wife, nice hot rotis, and there's a conversation happening between the wife and the husband. So that's something which looks so normal. It doesn't look as if something is forced to make the man look as being sensitive. So we find that kind of men in our lives, right? But why is it that we don't find them on TV or in our advertising? So there is a need to understand that advertising, TV, they're all visual mediums. It's very important to show different kinds of people, different contexts and dynamics in the ecosystem that is being shown, around the main story. Okay, for commercial reasons, you can't tell a story which is very non-stereotypical, TRPs, etc. I understand. But there are so many other characters, there are so many other situations where you can bring in. If you are showing a office situation, why don't you show pregnant women in the office? Why don't you show somebody, a disabled person, a person with disability in the office? Like we do find them, right? Or a transgender person in the office. Why do you have to always have beautiful looking, attractive women and men in the office? So this is one thing. And the other change I see is that there is, when you look at the categories, we find that the household and domestic and beauty, cosmetic products, the stereotyping is very, very strong. Maybe because the brands demand that, you're selling some cream because you want to make the girl want to look beautiful. So there is a certain, the problem is with the brands themselves. But but there are many other brands where I see a lot of change. Like for instance, digital mobile phones, IT products, and youth-centric products, like whether it is Zomato or whatever it is, where the basic, the audience is basically the young people. I see a lot more change in that, because I find both boys and girls being shown equally, girls being shown in a very non-stereotypical roles, or girls being shown exploring the world, doing things which they are not generally supposed to do. So there is a lot more experimentation happening in those brands to move away from the stereotype, because young people don't want stereotypes, because they lose their audience or clients. If they show very typical women in a youth-based brand, they will not get the kind of response. So they show girls and boys equally represented in the ad, equal time, space, other things. So we need to understand what are the products, who is the target audience, and why we are giving the kind of message that we are giving. And I feel that the more we show progressive images, the more we show non-stereotypical messages, the more we succeed in normalizing those. And then that is the beginning of change. Because once we normalize change, the change goes, it really amplifies. And then more and more people feel, oh, this is okay for a father to make rotis, or it is okay for the woman to shout at her husband, or whatever it is, like the small things which are there, which are happening in the environment, which are happening in the film or in the narrative, that's definitely going to have an impact on how we look at men and women, girls and boys in society.
Wonderful, Dr. Sharda, as always, very beautifully captured. So important. I mean, it's how to make something which is not a force fit. Let it be a natural way of existence and make it normal so that it becomes easy for people to take on that, this is the new normal. And that is all depending on all of us who can make that change. So just being conscious of time, and I have a lot of questions which have come from the audience as well. So I had another question for the panel, but I'm going to hold that back and take some of the audience questions. I think that, and we'll see if we have more time later. Let me start with one question. This is an anonymous one. This is for you, Subhash. And it says, in the age of information overdose, where everyone is ready with their own opinions, especially on social media, how do you effectively land your desired message? In the age of information overdose, where everyone is ready with their own opinions, especially on social media, how do you effectively land your desired message? Is this some question? Not sure why it's targeted to you, but maybe you want to take it.
Sure. See, I think the desired message is not constructed out of air. The desired message is always constructed with a very good understanding of the consumer. I think that's the way any good advertising agency would approach it, right? So it's got to be relevant. Your message is coming out of an insight that you've got into the consumer, or something that resonates with the consumer, right? Now, therefore, if you construct your message which is targeted to a particular consumer that you understood very well, it will resonate. But doesn't mean that there can't be contrarian points of view on that message, because in social media, everybody can have a point of view, and somebody may not like it or refute it. That's fine. As a brand, you're clear whom you're talking to. You're very clear what you stand for, and then you talk about that. If somebody else has a different point of view, accept it.
Nicely put. So talking about messaging, Kainaz, is one for you. It says that in a country where gender bias is often seen as unconscious or subconscious accepted social norm, how do you even craft this messaging in a print creative or a 30 to 60 second ad? Like, how do you bring that message so succinctly into a short format?
Yeah. So I think there are two answers to this. One is that when it is the message, like suppose the ad is about educating the girl child, or the ad is about anti-girl marriage, or the ad is about a woman getting a job and, being independent. And then the story can be easily crafted in 30 to 60 seconds. I don't think that is difficult at all, because we do it all the time. So if a complicated message about a certain engine of a car can be communicated, or a complicated, message about how a certain beauty product works on your skin can be communicated, the simple truth that, women are, equal and must be treated as such and must be projected as such can be easily communicated. The second part is what Dr. Sharda beautifully answered, that sometimes the communication is not engineered for that. Even then, you can have subtle cues in it. So recently we were doing an ad where there's a brother and a sister, and one sibling is supposed to be naughty and the other one is supposed to say, oh, no, we can't be naughty, mommy will catch us. So automatically it was written as the boy is the naughty one and the girl is the good one. She's supposed to be the one who listens to the parents and all. And, at the last minute we said, no. Why does it have to be like that? The story is not at all about emancipation of girl, child, or anything like that. It's a normal story about two kids, a brother and a sister. We changed it at the last minute. We said, no, the girl is going to be the brat. She's going to be the one who's, climbing up and doing what she shouldn't be doing. And let the boy be the one who's listening to the parents. And I'm saying that those subtle things also make a huge difference. The way we show women, the way we represent women. So even when we are not doing stories about women, when you're showing girl child, when you're showing women, consciously project them in a very progressive and not a stereotypical way.
Love it. Love the thought and love the way you changed it. And I just hope all of us and all the creative community things like that. Thanks, Kainaz. Question for you, Ashwini. It says that, do you still feel that women-centric films are still seen as boring films and not meant for Janta? Ashwini, you're on mute.
I think we as a country for the longest time have had women voices in terms of films, the protagonist being a woman. So it started off with Mother India, or any of the films like Mirch Masala, Mother India, or even films like Ijazat and all always had the woman who was having a strong point of view on how she wanted to lead her life and what she wanted to do. In between somewhere, I think the male hero got too much of importance and the woman as a hero was given lesser importance. So the dynamics changed. Then again, we started a changing society always represents the voice of cinema. That's what I do believe always. And so then we started having a whole lot of stories from the point of view of a woman. And most of the time, the cinema which was being told was the kind of issues which she was facing in terms of how she wanted to be represented in her status quo. So then the term called women-centric films got coined, which I hate this word, is because the point of view or the voices of the woman, and there may be a male protagonist. We never say films or movies which have a male protagonist and say that's a male centric film. We have never coined this word. So I think we need to get out of this habit of coining words as women centric, is because it's a story and the central character happened to be a woman there. And if you just put it that way, I think that everything would be fine. An audience doesn't go into watching a movie by looking at it and saying, "Oh, this is a woman-centric film, this is a male-centric film." They go, of course, there is entertainment, there are certain categories and genres in terms of films. But when you go and see a quintessential film, you're not going and watching a film saying that women-centric, male-centric. The voice is of a woman, the voice is of a man, the male protagonist is a woman, or the main protagonist is a man. The second point which I really want to make is that every time we talk about a story, the moment it is a story which has some entertainment value, but at the end has a social messaging, then it is a women-centric film, and that's where the boring aspect comes in. Is because every time it's a woman, a story which is related around a woman, and it has a social messaging, which means that she has something to really talk about, and we have to gain something out of it. This is for social change. But the same thing, if it is a story around a man, that does never becomes a social-centric film. So, and we have a lot of examples of that in the recent times, where we have many films and web series which have the protagonists are male, and it has a very strong social messaging in the end. So, so that's how it is. That's how it is divided. The moment we stop looking at films the way it is divided, then it'll just be a story and we're taking back something. There's another thing which I always try to compare, and recently I was just thinking about this thing, is that we when we read a novel, we never read a novel and say this is a woman-centric novel or this is a male-centric novel. A story is a story, and a novel is opened, and you read that book, whether it was Girl on the Train, or whether it was Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or any of those films. They're all like good movies which people have gone and watched, but I never tagged it saying that this is a woman-centric film. I don't think so. We have done that. There are a lot of.
I hope this gentleman or the woman or whoever asked this question has got this answer. Let's not stereotypicalize this question as well. So keep it gender neutral. This question to Rana. Rana, not sure why it was asked to you, but how do you deal with controversies when you make a progressive ad, like what happened after Tanishq interreligion ad?
I think it's a completely out of context question, but I'll take it. No, I think I think the simple answer would be that, sometimes we also understand that, like if you're making an idea or a messaging, you do it with a lot of thought, you go through an entire process and you come out with, a clear message or a clear objective why you're doing it. And, in today's world, we also understand that, if it's a bit on the sensitive side, the intolerance level or people's patience levels, or there are various new aspects that we are kind of discovering, that the voice of the people or the voice of the general people are become quite, aggressive, they're quite strong and all. So I think one of the key observations that we definitely try to do, at least I'm not representing everybody from the industry, but I'm just saying a lot of us have taken a cognizance aspect that, we don't try to unnecessarily go into a provocative zone, or you don't want to get into a zone of sensitivity where, it might irk or stir up some emotions or just raise certain conversations and all. But if it's a social issue, if it is something which is meaningful, if you want to raise certain conversation points, I think we must go ahead and do it. We must not get into that zone of that, because I think what Subhash said, that, in the social media world, everybody will have a point of view. So as long as we know that this is not something which will really create some kind of very aggressive change of some attitude or some conversations, I think we must go ahead and do it. So I don't think we should react to everything that is thrown back at the advertising media creative world, because then you will destroy the creativity of every single person. I don't think it's fair.
Any view on that?
Sorry?
And you have any view onto this, or you're aligned to what Rana said?
No, I think it's a choice that people have to make, right? So you may want to push the envelope, as they call it. You may want to make a provocation. You may want to make people's eyes open up to the new possibilities. Since you brought up Tanishq as an example, there was a Tanishq commercial where they showed a widow remarriage, if you remember, a few years ago.
Yep.
And it was a beautifully shot commercial, lovely. And there was no controversy around it.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet when they came on to touching of religion, unfortunately, it created a huge amount of emotions. And Tanishq didn't withdraw the commercial because they didn't believe in it. It was only when one of their employees' life was threatened that they said we must withdraw it, because so to placate the whole thing down. Now, that's unfortunate, right? Now, these are extreme reactions. Yes, I would completely agree with Rana. In my own company, I would say just stay away from religion. At this point of time, just stay away from religion. There are so many other things to talk about, right? And when it comes to gender diversity, etc., there's so many gender representation. There's so many important things to talk about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not just the big ones. I'm saying, as Dr. Sharda also pointed out, Ashwini pointed out, it's the small, unconscious ones that are more important than only the big topics that get debated, right? Film opens on a man reading the Economic Times and his wife comes and puts a cup of tea next to him. Now, the poor copywriter never thought anything wrong about it because he's seen his parents grow up like that.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? Now, can you make a difference in that? It's a small little changes that you bring that can make a bigger difference.
Absolutely. Spot on. And that's the basic. That's what Dr. Sharda said, make it a normal thing. Don't just try to make don't over intellectualize it. Just make it so natural flow to the creative communication, because it doesn't have to be force-fitted. I'm going to take one last question here before we round up. And I think there's so many questions. I'm sorry, everyone, I'm unable to ask everything, but I'll just ask this. Seems an interesting one, which comes from Anand. And this could be for either Kainaz or Rana. And says that, have you ever let go of a client or a project because it didn't believe in the gender diversity proposition for a product or a service?
I'm not going to say ladies first, so I'll go for it. Yeah. No.
Nice.
No, you unstereotyped yourself.
No. So I thought, let me go for it. This is a good chance. No, I just wanted to. No, so I think, So in reality, I don't think I can't off the cuff suddenly remember one client where I've let go. But I think one of the conversation points that we've kind of rediscovered is that in many of these story filmmaking or ideas, or, when you're presenting and all, if there is a point of view nowadays where there is a stereotypical way of thing, I think the teams are pushing back, and that's the great change at least we are witnessing. And, many other conversations are happening where, you are telling the client that very straightforward that, no, this is not going to work because I don't think this is how it happens anymore. So I think that's the big pushback that's definitely happening in storytelling, which is why you're seeing some of these changes happen across many of these stories or scripts or films that we are seeing, because the pushback has started from the younger bunch of people. And that's the great feeling. Kanaz, all yours.
Fantastic. Tainaz?
Yeah, so it has never come to a point where we had to let go of a client because of this. But I can tell you, and I completely agree with Rana, I think the fights are getting much stronger, and people are putting their foot down much harder than ever before. And even the clients, if you now go into a client meeting, there will rarely be like a few clients who will probably want to do the stereotypical work, but most of the clients are so proud of showing off the unstereotypical work that they do. And this I have to thank social media for, because the minute you share an authentic piece of work, something that represents a certain section of society or a gender in a correct fashion, the kind of reinforcement that you get is instant on social media. You don't have to wait, in half an hour, the client will know how society is reacting to their ad, and that makes them braver.
Fabulous. So hope that answers the question for you, Anand. And I'm sorry, there are some wonderful questions for all the panelists, but we have to be conscious of everyone's time as well. So I'm going to round up by just asking one question to all of you, and you can quickly give me your view to this in 1 minute, if you can. And I think there is no right or wrong to this. I just want to get a sense of this, that can you each share quickly the reflections on this study findings, and what will it take for the advertising and the media fraternity to make this key shift, or this needle to move in a more progressive way, where we are more gender diverse in our communication. So Nina, since you're on the bottom of my screen, top of my screen. Nina, you're on mute.
I think it's been a very, very engaging, discussion. So to sum up, I think, we pretty much know what we need to do. But I do think that, none of this is going to be unconsciously achieved. And therefore, my urge and plea would be to myself and to the entire industry at large is to make a conscious effort at this. So, if you were to put a benchmark to yourself and a tick mark to every piece of content, and whether it's the, short 20-second or the 2-hour, and you put a tick mark in your own head to say consciously whether we have at least achieved a little bit of and moved a little bit of that needle going forward, then, we would have made a difference, because this is not going to become an unconscious thing, but a very conscious thing that will have to be instilled across all the teams from top to bottom, to understand how you write the story, how you produce the story, how you tell the story, how you portray the characters, and that little conscious effort that needs to go with it. And, I would think that, and it's a relatable thing. And I was just thinking about all stuff that we were talking about, and I'm saying, look at who was the flag bearer at Olympics, right? Jai Ho to Mary Kom, and Jai Ho to Mirabai, and all those wonderful ladies who are making the magic right there. And I think those are conscious efforts at making and reinforcing a message that we want to lay out there.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nina. Rana?
Yeah, so I think it's, in very simply put, I think it's about being absolutely clear that it's a tick box you need to tick. So whether you call it being conscious or something, it is a change. And, there is no running away or trying to escape or trying to say the next generation will do it. I think it is kicked off, whether it is kicked off globally, whether it's kicked off in India. I think it's a very, very clear decision that a lot of things need to change. And this is absolutely a clear tick box that everybody at, in whether you're sitting right at the top or whether it's down the line or whether it's, people, partners, everybody, it's a must that we must change and adopt it. So there's absolutely clear.
Thanks, Rana. Atik, you're on mute.
See, one of my co-founders, she's a woman. Yeah, she and Baiju, who also happens that they're the husband-wife, they founded the company. So I work very, very closely with Divya. And one thing is certain, that we are doing everything it takes to ensure that there is balance and equality, whether it is communication, whether it is recruitment, whether it is, bigger responsibilities, leadership responsibilities. And with one single mantra, that small actions which right now in our journey is going to create a big, big difference as we go forward.
Wonderful. Thank you, Atit. Tenas, you're on mute. I think that's been my constant.
I know.
Okay.
So I think you have to be relentless when you want any change to happen, including this one, and at times even painful. So you have to bear the risk of a few people, either in your organization or at a client's end or in the society, even not liking you, as long as you know you're doing the right thing for the right reasons.
Wow, superb. Subhash?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of very interesting words that came up today, which I caught on, right? And when I go back to the research report findings, and see, one is this thing of normalizing it. I think that's a very important word, right? Because sometimes when you want to very impactfully make a point, you can become an activist, right? From tomorrow, all my ads, men will wear the saris and women will wear the pants. It's not going to happen, right?
True.
But normalizing it starts from, as Nina put, of being aware, of being conscious, right? And I liked Dr. Sharda's kind of breaking them up into different ways of looking at it. Are you wanting to be gender sensitive? Are you wanting to be gender transformative? There'll be some themes that will be gender transformative, but day-to-day normalizing and being conscious can also make you gender sensitive and not go into gender insensitive. So I think it's a question of, when you look at a script or you're discussing a proposition internally, what are you being aware and conscious, and are we making too big a thing out of it, or is it just about normalizing? I think those are the two big takeouts from me today.
Fabulous, fantastic. And we'd love to see that being put into the guideline you're setting for Gen Next as well. So I think that would be wonderful. Thanks, Subhash. Ashwini?
It's important to be a strong nut to crack. Because what happens is, the moment you kind of become a little sensitive to situations, then it directly starts reflecting on the kind of work you want to do and how people look at you. I'll just go back a little. I'm not going to take too much of your time. But the kind of hiring we do in ad agencies when I was there, and for a certain kind of brand. So if there was a sanitary napkin brand, then there would be only women working on it. Hardly any men, either from either sides of the brand. And when there was something which is vehicle, I remember we, Kenas and me, I think we worked on Fiat together, and it was a new thing for us that we were working on a car brand, is because it was very categorized that men would work on these kind of brands and women would work on these kind of brands. And we had to just reshuffle everything and say, whatever interests you, just let's just work on that. The second thing came in because then you have diverse minds. You have the yin and the yang who's working on both the kind of thinking which is needed for any kind of brand. So I just feel that men can also work on fashion brands, and women can work on car and bikes and whatever, or even condoms or Durex or whatever. So for me, that kind of mixture really helps in terms of change of thinking, because you get different kinds of thought process. The second thing which has happened right now, which has happened very recently, not until 5 years ago, is that with of hiring of directors now, because I'm on this side of the spectrum, is that for every three biddings, you have one woman director who has to bid for the ads which we are doing. And I think that's a great change, is because you're just not looking at skewing only towards men as directors, but also directors of all kinds, so men and women. So that's a great change which has come in, because the voices increase then.
Fabulous. Thanks, Ashwini. And last but not the least, Dr. Sharda, can we have your video on as well?
Oh, I think. 1 second. It's on? Sorry.
Now, yes, now it is.
They
Yes.
have to put it.
Yes, Dr. Sharda.
As far as the advertising and communication industry is concerned, I feel that it is important that the regulatory bodies, the networks, and the professional bodies need to really come forward and take a few steps to see that these changes become institutionalized in the advertising world. For instance, I would like to talk. I mean, when the glass lion was introduced at Cannes, suddenly everything, like, I think it was a game changer moment, because suddenly gender became an issue that the communicators had to be conscious about. And we also have an abbey for gender sensitivity in India. But the most important thing is these guidelines provide us a ready tool to rank organizations on the basis of their gender sensitivity, like the creative agencies on the on in terms of their sensitivity. Very good. We have a good we have good indicators to see whether the content they are producing is gender sensitive, and how consistently they are producing gender sensitive content. And also it helps in identifying individual ads and ranking them, or analyzing them from a gender perspective. So apart from ranking the agencies and the ads, I would also suggest that there should be industry award for exclusively for gender sensitivity, like the way we have the olive crown awards for climate change. I think it is very important to have industry awards for gender sensitivity for various categories and other things, because it sort of institutionalizes the very concept of being sensitive and in our communication. So these are my two asks from the industry.
Wonderful, Dr. Sharda, very loud and clear. And myself and Geena representing IAA will definitely take this recommendation and discuss internally to see how we can play our part. Just like the IAA Olive Crown Awards, what we can do on that front. So more on that to you, we'll get back, ma'am. But thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This has been such a rewarding hour and a half. Thank you so much for taking out so much time from your busy schedules. Really, really appreciate this. Like there was a question asked by somebody in the group called, I think Divya asked this question, and she said, this is really great, but and we have the guidelines, but how do we make this louder? How do we make it heard? How do we make it more prominent and make everybody understand that there is a need to address? It is not something, actually, I'm going to correct you here, Rana, it's not a box to be ticked. It's not something we have to do for the sake of doing. It's something we should become a new normal. I mean, that should be our normal. That's what Dr. Sharda alluded to. And it's wonderful to get each one of your opinions, so strong voices, and all of us, I know, can make a difference, and I'm sure we will. So on that note, I want to thank you once again, and thank you, UNICEF and GDI, for kickstarting this fantastic conversation. I'm sure, as they say, a lot needs to be done. A long way to go, but we've at least started on a good footing. As they say, good things happen and when you start is good. So thank you once again to each one of you. Over to you, Frisha.
Thank you.
And of course, a big thank you to you as well, Megha. Thank you so much for moderating that session. And I know that we had a lot of questions that were coming in. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, we truly appreciate you coming in and joining this conversation. At the end of the day, it's not only just about what was said, but we also hope that we make you feel in such a way that you can be a voice of change. We'd also like to give a very big thank you to all our partners, a big thank you to our web media support partners, MXM India, Campaign India, AdGully, exchange for media, media buzz, and Indian television as well. Let's start the conversation, everyone, and let's together be that voice of change. My name is Tricia, and thank you all once again. Have a wonderfully empowered week and a safe one too. Bye-bye.